Welcome to Studio One, located on the campus of the University of North Dakota. Glad to have you along. I'm your host, Tom Buring. Up ahead in this half hour, we'll meet Dr. Steve Wikel, a microbiologist developing vaccines to control disease carried by the small but nasty tick. We'll also talk to the Executive Vice President and Director of Equity Investment at Oppenheimer Management Corporation, Hank Frantzen. In our Open Doors segment, we'll take a look at a few of those thriving in the booming business of contemporary Christian rock. But first, let's go to the news desk with Chris Blaine. Chris?
Thank you, Tom. About 300 supporters of the Yes Coalition gathered last Thursday in University Park in Grand Forks at a rally to support the December 5th referendum on Measures 3, 4, and 7. A cross-section of teachers, students, and public from North Dakota gathered to hear speakers implore them get out and inform people of the dire consequences of the failure to support the sales tax, the income tax increases. Now, the rally was addressed by UND President Tom Clifford, Roger Erskine from the NEA, and North Dakota State Superintendent of Public Instruction Wayne Sanstead.
They have to cut program, they have to cut really opportunities for young people, and that's everybody's, kindergarten through graduate school young people.
Sanstead says Yes has a lot of work to do to inform voters before the December 5th referral. UND's homecoming celebration kicks off tonight. The Sioux Search all-campus variety show will take place in the Memorial Union at 7:30, followed by the coronation of the homecoming king and queen at 9:30. After the hockey game on Friday, the first ever fireworks pep rally will be held at the intramural fields. The annual homecoming parade will begin Saturday morning at 10:30, starting at the Chester Fritz Auditorium. Lastly, a homecoming dance featuring Mike and the Monsters will be held in the ballroom in the Memorial Union at 9 p.m. Jack-o'-lanterns, costumes, and trick-or-treating are just around the corner with the celebration of All Saints' Day on Tuesday. Halloween originated with the ancient New Year festivals and festivals of the dead. The main activity of Halloween is, of course, trick-or-treating, but during the mid-1900s, trick-or-treating became less popular in large cities where many neighbors didn't know one another. So today, Halloween still means the same to children, but parents have to take safety precautions, so keep your eyes and ears open for fun and safe events in the Grand Forks area for your children on Halloween. The UND hockey team takes on Minnesota Gophers in a two-game series this weekend. Coming off a two-game loss to Northern Michigan, the Sioux are 0-2 in the WCHA and 2-2 overall. The Gophers, ranked number 1 in preseason polls, have fallen to 6th place overall in the league after losing last weekend's series to first-place Minnesota Duluth. Team captain Lee Davidson says he expects the rival to be as intense as ever. The two teams match up well and both feature an explosive offense with strength in the forward positions. Davidson says the Sioux will concentrate its efforts on the Gophers' inexperienced defense and Minnesota's untested goaltending. That's a look at today's news. For Studio One, I'm Chris Blaine reporting. Tom?
Chris, as always, fire on ice with that rivalry. If there were not even another game played, we have met plenty of heroes out in the Bay Area over the last week. For, however, the sake of tradition and championship, the Giants and Athletics will resume the World Series with Game 3 in Candlestick Park tomorrow night with a 7:30 start. Closer to home, the University of North Dakota Fighting Sioux football team plays its homecoming game against conference co-leader St. Cloud State University Saturday afternoon at Memorial Stadium. Kickoff time is 1:30. Studio One meteorologist Jay Searles is here with some weather. Jay?
Thank you, Tom. The pleasant weather we've been in this weekend. Taking a look at the almanac, we got a high yesterday of 78 degrees, which is a record. That broke the old record of 77 degrees. And this morning's low was 62 degrees, which was still nice, with no precipitation in the last 24 hours. Currently at 4 p.m. in the Grand Forks area, partly cloudy skies, a temperature of 75 degrees, winds are southerly at 20 miles per hour, and the relative humidity is 51%. Taking a look at the map this afternoon, we see this very low pressure has developed over southwestern South Dakota. Ahead of this system, strong southerly winds are pumping up a lot of moisture from the Gulf of Mexico, and some relatively warm temperatures with readings in the 70s, and even a few 80s are starting to develop in parts of the central U.S. Behind this system, some cooler and drier air is also beginning to move in. And this is providing for a mix of some showers and thunderstorms that beginning to break out in eastern South Dakota and southern North Dakota. And as this area of low pressure slowly tracks to the north, that will overspread rain across the entire region. That's going to be a need for a wet tomorrow and a wet weekend too. I'll be back a little bit later with the River Valley Weekend Outlook. Tom?
Thank you, Jay. One of country music's favorite female vocalists, Reba McEntire, will be at the Chester Fritz Auditorium this Saturday with two shows starting at 7 and 10 p.m. Her special guest will be Lionel Cartwright. For more ticket information, contact the Chester Fritz box office, but do it quickly. Tickets are going fast. We'll talk ticks with microbiologist Steve Wikel when Studio One continues.
There are people out there who need help, but don't have anyone with the right skills and knowledge to turn to for help with their taxes. You or your organization can be there for someone who needs help. Volunteer your time, and the IRS will volunteer the training to help make someone's taxes less taxing.
People in the National Guard and Reserve make up over 40% of our nation's combat-ready forces. It's a job that requires them to face some very big challenges. So please, don't make their biggest challenge asking you for time off to do their training.
Mr. Aldridge, you, got a minute?
Be a hero. Give your employees the freedom to protect ours.
Welcome back to Studio One. With this summer's scare of Lyme disease, Americans begin to take ticks and the disease they carry a bit more seriously. Our first guest has taken a microscopic look at how a little tick can take a big bite out of livestock and poultry producers' pocketbooks. Dr. Steve Wikel is currently doing research that will find a vaccine to save millions in losses. His study recently took him to review the livestock ticks research program in Nairobi, Kenya. We welcome to Studio One, Steve Wikel. Steve, good to see you. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Last summer, the public experienced mass paranoia concerning the onset of Lyme disease. There was much concern about overreaction. You're a professional in this area. How are you reacting to it?
Well, I think there's a good reason to be concerned about the incidence of Lyme disease. It's obviously increasing in various regions of the country. It's certainly a problem in the Midwestern Minnesota, Wisconsin areas. It's certainly something to be concerned about, but I think there was a very clear statement made in a recent review in the New England Journal of Medicine which states that it probably is being somewhat overdiagnosed. But that's probably quite good because people tend to be much more aware of the problem, and that public knowledge is going to help save a lot of illness in the long run.
And Steve, from what I hear, the disease is showing up, it's reported in 33 states. Estimates are as high that several thousand Americans will be diagnosed with Lyme disease as a result of late summer, early fall activities. What do we attribute to the outbreak last summer?
Okay, I think part of the reason you're seeing increased numbers is one, public awareness and awareness by clinicians in terms of diagnosing the disease. Also, depending on certain climatic conditions, it tends to be more favorable for tick activity. Therefore, with increased numbers of ticks, more people moving into areas where they're likely to come into contact with ticks, i.e. recreational activities, living and moving into suburban areas, much greater chance of exposure. Since 1980 until the end of 1988, there were an estimated 14,000 cases of Lyme diagnosed in the U.S. alone. But it's important to remember that this is a global problem, and it's also increasing in terms of its distribution. So we'll see an increase in the number of cases in coming years, I fully expect.
Could we see, Steve, the conditions reoccur again next summer?
Well, it depends on the climatic conditions in terms of numbers of ticks and this type of thing, but I think you'll probably see relatively stable numbers of cases, possibly depending again on weather conditions, how well the ticks overwinter, this type of thing, maybe an increase.
Of course, last summer it took the country by storm, yet for cattle producers, this isn't anything new. They deal with this every year, regularly, tick problems galore. Can you give us an idea of the enormity of financial loss?
Okay, the problem is really quite significant, and this is not just Lyme disease, although Lyme disease occurs in dogs as well as in cattle and horses. If one looks in the United States at the losses caused by arthropods just to cattle producers alone, the last years with available data, it was an estimate of about $2.5 billion per year, not counting the cost of chemicals for control. On a global basis, you can multiply that several times, so it's a significant economic problem.
And you have a solution, the vaccine. Describe what happens to the tick.
Well, I'm not sure that we basically have a solution as a magic bullet type of approach, but we've developed a strategy whereby we can immunize livestock so that the immune response of that animal will stop the tick from feeding. Basically what it does is it causes the gut of the tick to rupture, and as a consequence of that, it stops feeding. The female tick can then not produce ova, which represent the next generation. And it's important to remember that for every single female that feeds, she will produce several thousand eggs, potentially several thousand new ticks. So we have a strategy by which, using the host's immune response, a vaccine, we can limit the feeding of the arthropod.
Where do you intend to distribute it?
Well, we have a relationship now with a major pharmaceutical company in terms of developing this, and the market for this type of thing would be global. It's a serious problem, given the fact that many of the chemicals which are used to control ticks, resistance has developed to them. In other words, they are no longer effective in terms of killing the ticks. There's a tremendous concern when one uses chemicals in terms of the environmental impact, meat residues, milk residues, this type of thing. There's also the fact that because of resistance occurring, it becomes far more costly to develop a new compound. There are very stringent controls on many of these compounds, how they can be used, stored, disposed. So basically what we're doing is we're going with a biological route, a vaccine, which will be very specific to the bovine, will be very specific to the target species, in other words, in this case ticks, but we're also working with this in terms of certain biting flies and mange mites and so on. So we have a strategy which is very targeted to the organism that we want to control and is basically environmentally friendly.
Steve, you do good work. You do good work. Good to see you. Thanks for coming on. Microbiologist Dr. Steve Wikel. After this break, an inside look at contemporary Christian rock when Studio One continues.
Every year, thousands of babies die from choking, suffocating, or other breathing emergencies. Just imagine how many of them could be saved if only they came with instructions. Please learn American Red Cross Infant and Child CPR. American Red Cross. We help you help others.
Contemporary Christian rock is now recognized as a mainstay in the music industry, with several songs hitting the mainstream music charts. On our Open Door segment, we explore the problems these artists faced, recognized as serious ministers by the church and serious musicians by the industry.
Like a thief in the night, just like lightning in the sky, when Jesus comes to take his church away.
From stained glass windows to electric guitars, they are modern-day ministers of music. Many of them successfully building contemporary Christian music into both a big business and a prolific platform of ministry. However, this five-tune ministry's strongest criticism ironically comes from within the church. There are some outspoken evangelists who denounce the approach as compromising and the music as immoral, arguing the contemporary sound has no place in the church.
You know, music has always been a vital part of the church, and always has been, always will be. I think that contemporary Christian music can be used for the concert stage, and it can be used in the church. I mean, my favorite kind of music are the kind that's created for both. That you have music that can be used in a church, but you do it in a concert hall, that you can do in a school, that you can do anywhere that really ministers and says something.
It's my personal position that all music, and I'm talking about music without lyrics, but just instrumental music, stylistically, music has no moral value until lyrics have been attached to it, and then the lyrics and the message and the mood that is put with the music by the writer, that gives the music moral value.
Ed Degramo and Dana Key began their music ministry in the late 70s. David Meece has been composing, performing, and recording for 11 years. Although all are proven musicians, they are not to be mistaken for entertainers. They say they are ministers first, called to the ministry, using entertainment as a means to their evangelism.
I'm not a preacher. I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm a musician, you know, who's a Christian and who simply shares what the Lord's doing in my life through my songs. Consequently, what I do is I do share my faith very openly and very clearly. I entertain in order to minister. If you have just entertainment, you know, well, I'd rather go see Genesis.
Dana and I weren't playing music. We would be in another ministry because we feel like that we've been called to be in a ministry. It's just that we know how to play rock and roll, and God has decided that that's the way that we need to proclaim His name.
Because they are musicians with a gospel message, they are much like other evangelists, but then again, unlike other evangelists, unique in their financial support.
We consider ourselves very different from most evangelists in that We don't make our living off of contributions. We don't take up a love offering. We don't take contributions at all. Eddie and I make our living because we sell records and we sell concert tickets. If you want to buy one, you can buy one. If you don't want to buy one, you don't have to buy one. And we're not a non-profit organization, so we don't have to go constantly milk the audience for money for us to survive. And so each individual who makes a choice to support us supports us by buying a record or buying a concert ticket, and that's an individual decision. I think that distinguishes us from the tele-evangelists, and I really do hate to be lumped in with them.
For these evangelists, financial accountability is overshadowed by a greater concern: compromise. The measure of success in Christian music and the buzzword among most ministering musicians these days is crossover. That's when a Christian artist grows beyond the expected audience into the massive general listening market, top 40 airplay, and heavy album sales. Amy Grant and Stryper are two of the most recent achievers. This either provides a larger opportunity for ministry or presents a major distraction to a message that must not be compromised.
I find a lot of times if you start trying to water down your message to try to reach an unsaved kid, you know, you're not only not going to reach the unsaved kid, but you're not going to say anything if you do, you know. Most important thing for a contemporary Christian artist to do is to try to say something through his music, and that's going to encourage people and make a difference for them, whether you're trying to evangelize the unsaved or whether you're trying to speak to the Christian. And that's only going to be done if you stick by your convictions and you stand by them and you say, this is what God means to me, period.
More and more groups are speaking directly from the Scripture, and they're not mincing their words. They're making sure that their messages are very straightforward and scriptural, while other groups that feel uncomfortable with that are moving more into the area of being entertainers. And we've known that there was a distinction between the two kinds of groups for a long time, but it's just in the last few years that it's the difference between the ministers and the entertainers is becoming obvious to the audience.
I think the confusion has come from some people maybe starting and being in Christian music and ministering, and then all of a sudden saying, hey, I don't need to do this anymore. You know, all I need to do is sing. When they don't really understand that a lot of the people that really followed their careers and came to see them really like the other part better. You see what I mean?
Contemporary Christian music has every opportunity to expand within the music industry. Its mark of distinction will be the message of the artist. Perhaps then its direction rests upon the messengers, who are many, each ministering to the beat of a different drummer, but all to the same conductor.
We as Christians have an obligation to really work with each other and say, I'm going to do this for the Lord, and I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to encourage those around me, not beat them over the head, not be pompous, but really try to just say what I'm saying in order to encourage them and minister to them. And that's the way the Lord would have me do, and put God back at the center of it all.
David Meece, Ed Degramo, and Dana Key. We'll talk to investment expert and UND alumnus Hank Frantzen when Studio One continues.
Some people say the press goes too far sometimes.
Sorry, I don't think it's appropriate to comment at this time.
Had they stopped here, you may never have known about Watergate.
No comment. Please, no comment.
Or here, you may never have known if an issue concerned you.
The committee approved all.
Now you say the committee was involved, sir?
No.
To protect your right to be informed,
I have nothing more to say.
how far should the press go? To learn more about the free press, contact the First Amendment Center.
Our next guest has distinguished himself as one of the leading investment managers in the world. He was the first American chairman and chief investment officer in a Japanese firm. He's now executive vice president and director of equity investments at Oppenheimer Management Corporation in New York. Hank Frantzen, a 1964 University of North Dakota graduate, has returned to Grand Forks to receive one of UND's highest honors, the Sue Award. We welcome to Studio One Hank Frantzen. Hank, congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. It's good to have you back.
Good to be back.
Among your responsibilities, communicating investment strategies and forecast. How do you forecast, and how accurate are they?
I'm sure my forecasts are very accurate. It's the other people's that we worry about. But one of the things you do when you forecast is you have to look into history. So you kind of have to look at and find times that seem like today. And then you look at forecasts of the future and apply valuation techniques to those forecasts. For instance, right now we're looking for an economic slowdown. We think earnings will slow down as the economy slows down. We think the Federal Reserve will ease rates, but first the market itself, rates will go down and the Federal Reserve will follow. So we think that the slowdown that we're looking at will not be very long-lasting and will be somewhat shallow, what a lot of people call the soft landing. When we talk about forecasting, we in fact are looking for a resumption of kind of a 7 to 8% profit growth in earnings combined with about a 3% dividend growth. And if you work the math through, that gets you to about 3,500 on the Dow, or up 40% from where we are by 1992. So we're pretty optimistic about it. But when you get a little shorter term, there are a lot of different problems you have to encompass.
Hank, now there's good news, bad news. The good news is I heard you. The bad news is half of it went right over my head. I'm willing to guess that the large majority of people don't follow market activity or don't even understand it. How does that hurt the average American consumer?
Well, I think a lot of people do understand it. One of the problems is, and, you know, I talked with some of the students this morning, and certainly they have a very good grasp of what's going on in the stock markets. They ask great questions. But as you get onto a working career, you're on TV, other people are doing a lot of different things, and they just don't have time to concentrate on the equity markets or what's going on in the financial markets. You talk to a group of retirees, and you got a whole different question. They're very sharp. I mean, they spend 99% of their day working on the financial markets. It affects everyone in one way or another. I mean, you work in the financial markets to attain money for savings, and principally a lot of people are looking for their retirement monies. Meanwhile, the retirement monies are very big. I mean, I don't want to have to depend upon Social Security to carry me through when I retire. So I've got to build up a nest egg, both myself and through a pension fund.
We're looking, the general population, again, looking to expert advice. We hear hundreds of different opinions and speculation. Who are the best experts to listen to?
Well, I'm going to get in trouble right now by forgetting some of the people, but in the field of economics, when we talk domestic economics, I think Ed Hyman of C.J. Lawrence is one of the very, very best. When we talk about market forecasters, some of the very good ones are Steve Einhorn of Goldman Sachs, Bob Farrell of Merrill Lynch, and Mike Sherman of Shearson, to name just a few. And I'm sure, you know, when I get back, they're going to say, Hank, why the hell did you forget me? We're good friends.
Let's draw on your expertise. Hank, pessimistic or optimistic about where the market is now and where it's headed?
Well, I think the market now, one of the problems we have right now is the volatility in the markets. The volatility in part caused by program trading. Part of that has come about by the fact that we are getting much more institutionalized in the stock markets. It has its bad points and its good points. One of the good points is that it drives people toward firms like our own who are professionals and trained to deal with that type of thing. One of the bad points is partially I think it keeps individual investors out of the market. I think as we move along in time, you know, we're up over 20% so far this year. Not bad. We were up at the point of October 13th, or the real witching day in the stock market, probably on average about 30%. And we hadn't had a correction since November of 1988. So it had been a long time for the stock market to move well without a correction. Shorter term, you know, I can't tell you that I can forecast day to day, but longer term, I think the market's going a lot higher. I mean, there's a lot more savings. There's a lot of wealth out there, and it's ultimately got to come to the equity market.
Hank, pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
Congratulations on the Sue Award.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy your stay here. 1989 Sue Award winner Henry Frantzen. When we come back, we'll take one last look at the weekend's forecast.
just a fraction of what we spend dining out could help pick up the tab for a good cause. A small part of what we spend on sports could help keep our community in shape, or some of our time on the phone could help answer society's problems. Won't you get involved? By giving 5% of your income and volunteering 5 hours per week, you can really help your community. This year, make it your goal to give 5. What you get back is immeasurable.
Come from?
This Friday night, a man noted for his great talent in music will be honored. Mr. V, Professor Robert Van Voorhees, will be remembered by a special benefit concert at the Chester Fritz Auditorium at 9 p.m. Featured guests will include Nashville singer-songwriter and former UND music student Carol Chase, along with the Dick King Orchestra and the UND Jazz Choir. Ticket costs will benefit the Robert Van Voorhees Memorial Scholarship. Jay's here with one last look at the weekend's forecast. Jay?
Thanks again, Tom. Taking a look at our forecast map for tomorrow afternoon, that cold front which was out in the western part of the state and that area of low pressure in southwestern South Dakota, by tomorrow afternoon we'll be up in northwestern Minnesota. Spreading ahead of that front, showers and thunderstorms. Some will be heavy in southern Minnesota. Temperatures will be very nice as well, with readings in the 80s across southern Minnesota, cooling off to the 50s and 60s across North Dakota and South Dakota. For the forecast in detail, for tonight we'll have a low of 50 degrees, winds will be southerly at 15 to 20 miles per hour, and there's a 60% chance of thunderstorms. Some of those will be heavy in the area, so keep your eye, or your ear rather, to the radio. On tomorrow, mostly cloudy skies with a high of 58 degrees. Winds will become northwesterly at 15 to 20 miles per hour, and there is a 40% chance for some lingering showers. On Saturday, partly cloudy skies with a high of 50 to 55, and on Sunday, mostly cloudy, and another system comes in with another chance of rain, with a high of 45 to 50 degrees. So don't forget to set your clocks back this weekend as we move out of daylight savings time and into Central Standard Time. Have a good weekend. Tom?
Okay, Jay, you do the same. We'd like to thank our guests, Hank Frantzen and Dr. Steve Wikel, for joining us today. Tuesday, the School of Communication and the university lost a colleague. Professor Harley Strauss, who taught photography for 9 years here at UND, died of cancer. He was a good photographer and teacher who had a deep concern for his students, the type of teacher we all hope we have at some point in our lives. The School of Communication has a void today. We extend our warmest sympathies to his family and friends.